In this lesson, we're going to talk about higher order components. So to get us started, I've got a simple app component here. It's outputting a button component as well as a label component. The button component is a stateless function component and it outputs props.children as its content. The label component is a full class component and it also outputs its this.props.children as its content. Now, the purpose of a higher order component is to share common functionality or information between multiple components. And the sole function of a higher order component is to take in a component and return a new component. So we're going to go ahead and call our higher order component HOC. It's going to take in that inner component and it's going to return class extends react dot component. So we can do a lot of things here, but the first thing we're going to do is render our new component. So we're simply going to return our inner component, whatever that was, in its JSX syntax. So to use this, let's see, on the button, we're simply going to wrap the entire function in our HOC method. And on the label, let's go ahead and create a new component name. So we're going to say const label HOC equals, we'll call our HOC component and we'll pass it our label component. So now here where we're using label, we're going to rename that label HOC. And the first thing we're going to notice is that our props children is no longer passing through. So when we're creating a higher order component, we need to take that into consideration. And the simplest solution to this is simply to spread this.props into our component. So just pass that information right on through as props. And there we can see in the browser, our props children is now coming through. So since our higher order component in this case is returning a class component, we can go ahead and add on some component lifecycle methods. So here in the component will mount, we'll say will mount in the console log statement. So we should see that fire off twice. And if our label component, which is also a class component, had its own component will mount phase, we could log out here, label will mount. So we'll see the higher order component fire off twice, and then we'll see the label component fire off once. So there we go. And now we could also create some state for these guys. So here in our higher order component, let's set up a constructor. We'll call super in order to get our context, and we'll go ahead and give this some state. So we'll say state is equal to count of 0. And then we're going to go ahead and set up an update method here. And in that, we'll simply increment that state of count. So we'll say count is equal to the state.count plus 1. So we're going to need to get that state into our components. So we can just spread state as a new prop. And then in our component, let's break this out a little bit. Right after props children, we'll say props.count. And we'll do the same in our label. Save that, and we can see that our count has in fact made it into both of them. And then for the update method, we'll just pass that as an additional prop. So we'll say update equals this dot update. We'll bind that to this. And then on our button, we'll say on click equals props dot update. Save that. And as we click on the button, it is updating that state. And on the label, we'll say on mouse move equals this props.update. Clean that up just a little bit. Save that. So on our button, the state of count is updated when we click on it, and on the label, it's updated when we move the mouse.